Engineer Segun Martin, you're welcome. Elder Onyisuba, you're welcome. Very, you're welcome.
Thank you, Sunday. Thank you very much.
Oh, please, everybody, mute yourself when you come in. We'll start in 2 minutes. 10 past the hour, we're going to start. Please try and mute yourself. Engineer Onyisuba, please, sir, mute your mic.
Up.
We're going to start in 1 minute precisely.
60 seconds. Countdown.
Yes.
Dr. Moses.
Dr. Moses, you're welcome. Oh. Engineer Koya, you're welcome. Engineer Jalak, you're welcome on board. These are what we call the hour plus 10. People that arrive hour plus 10.
Oh well. They are right.
Sunday.
Yes, engineer.
I think you should find Dr. Moses and Engineer Jala.
Don't worry. They'll take us to 8:05.
Why are you finding me?
For coming late.
I'm not late. Actually, I was early. The Wi-Fi is messing up.
Well, that is not, you are not early when you came in after 2. How can you be early?
Remember, Engineer Jala is one of the delegates that is having a conversation between Ukraine and Russia at the moment. So he's a very busy man.
Yeah, actually, and Dr. Sunday, you are right. I'm presently at Montenegro.
Right.
That's what I'm talking from.
That's enough. Thank you.
I will join back.
Thank you very much. Can you everybody please mute themselves, please? We're about to kick it off. Right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for turning up. We've got 13 people in the room, and I'm sure other people will turn up as we move on. Yes, it's been a hectic 2 years of running this thing as we're running it now. And only God will know how long this is going to be going for, but we're used to it. So we thank God that we're still here and can still see each other by video, can hear each other's voice. So today, or should I say this month, the topic of our seminar or webinar in the Nigerian Society of Engineering, NSE, London, UK branch, is about health and safety. And we're going to kick it off with our interesting talk this afternoon. But before that, I just want to take us through a couple of things. Usual protocol, ask everybody to be to mute themselves when you come in, unless you want to speak. If you want to speak, raise up your hand or you put something in the chat, and we'll get you to speak. If you have any technical problem, just put something in the chat and we'll help you to resolve it. Maybe you can't hear what we're saying, or you have issue connecting. We can do our best to try and help you there. And this webinar is being recorded, and I hope all of you agree for it to be recorded. If you don't agree to it, please let us know. And I don't know what we're going to do, but at least we know if you don't agree to it. Engineer, the speaker will tell us whether he's going to make his slides available to us or not at the end of the presentation. So it will answer that question. The usual acknowledgement, although some of these people are online, because some engineer from Nigeria, we've got some engineer from Ukraine, from America. I could see them on the line joining us gradually. And then we'll have our elder Oyin Subao, all the way from Kwara State. And I think he's got a word or two to say at the end. I'm not going to get you to speak now, sir. With your request that you told me, I want you to say to the group as to what you want the group to help with. So maybe we'll be able to channel something towards you. All the chairmen and chairperson on the group, we welcome you all, fellow engineer, architects, and all that. We welcome you to this webinar today. Unfortunately, our chairman, Engineer Tio Bozun, couldn't be here with us today. He's one of those people that, responds to emergencies. And he had an emergency in Nigeria via Ukraine, as usual. So he's currently dealing with some big issues somewhere else, and he's not able to join us. But he sent me a slide of his welcome address, and which I'm going to give. Now, as I've said, he apologized for not being here today because it's part of the peace talk that is going on all over the world. And he mainly highlighting to us that this month is so important to engineers all over the world. There's something called This is Engineering by the Royal Academy of Engineers. This is something we celebrate every year. And that's to showcase engineers from anywhere doing something fantastic, doing something incredible, something that nobody else have done before. And I've posted a video on this many, many times. And believe me, if you have anything you're doing and you want the rest of the world to know about it, you can go to hashtag This is Engineering and post your video or just anything you wanted to post, a picture, anything interesting. So that he wanted us to be aware of that. And secondly, this week, actually precisely yesterday, was the World Engineering Day for Sustainable Development. Again, that's a major big thing that's going on all over the world. And our take on that is the health and safety, which is all about sustainable development. Without health and safety, you cannot sustain anything in the world. So that's our way of celebrating that. And we've also, next week, I think, is International Women's Day. That is happening next week. Again, we like to encourage our women. We like to, push them so that they can achieve their potential, so that the whole world won't be run by men alone, egoistic men. Let's our women, our mother, our sister, to come in as well and sit on the table with us and help us put the narrative forward. One thing I wanted to, the chairman wanted to share with us is what we've been doing for about a year now, supporting female students in technical education. That has been going so well. And the chairman wanted me to share a video, which I shared yesterday, but if you haven't seen it, I'm going to share the video again now of what NSE London UK branch has been doing in terms of supporting female in technical education. And this is the video. Wait a minute, I should share with sound. Sorry. Let me share it again. I should share with sound. Share sound. Okay, let's start again. Can you hear it?
As one of 10 female students of Government Technical College in CIUD, this controversial Nigeria Center of Engineering UK branch, what are the benefits have you derived from this scholarship?
My name is Mita Lanet from Government Technical College in CIUD, Kwara State. I'm one of the beneficiaries of this scholarship scheme given to us by Nigeria Society of Engineers NSE-LNB branch. We really appreciate the efforts of the NSE of us for giving us this opportunity. If not because of it, many of us may not be in the classroom today. Even our parents are in life of our students. We now take the lesson for free. Once again, I say thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Jose Miriam from Government Technical College in CIUD. In fact, when they sent us for school fees, we used to assist our parents at home to wear bread, pure water, or food buy in order to get our school fees. Therefore, we appreciate the NSE UK branch for the opportunity given to us. Thank you, sir and ma'am. You're welcome.
Right. So that's the short video there, which I said it was shared yesterday, and I'm just sharing with you again. And that's what the chairman wants us to be aware of, that we're doing this project in conjunction with APWEN. This is the Association of Professional Women Engineers in Nigeria. And they've been really supporting the girls on the ground, where from here, we're supporting them by paying their fees, their school fees, their examination registration, and giving them some other role model activities. As a result of that, the president, the chairman wanted to plead with all of you to pay up your subscription. These are the level of subscription that we have in the group. Full member, £75, associate 50, student 30, affiliated 15 pounds, and companies. Those you guys have mega company like our speaker today, I'm sure he can afford to give us more than £150, more like £150,000. He can give us. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce the speaker, Engineer Tomi Adebayo. Tomi is a civil structural engineer, as well as the building control consultant based right here in the UK. With over 35 years of experience, he practiced in Nigeria in his early career, and then moved to the UK. Tomi was a principal structural engineer in local government building control for over 15 years. And now, when he had enough of that, he started to run his own firm that provides structural engineering support to building control approval inspector firms. Let me break that down. I mean, he said earlier, he spent 15 years working for the building control. When this building control council dish out all their work to other people because they didn't want to employ people full-time, they actually spend more money employing consultants. So it's win-win for Engineer Tomi here. He spent 15 years working with them, and then he pulled out, and then they come after him and say, oh, come and continue to do the same thing you were doing for us for 15 years. So it doubles his income. Well done. You know, that's a no-brainer. And today, he will be contributing mainly to the possible regulation practices that will reduce the risk of collapse in building generally, and especially high-rise structure. And we are very well aware of this. Nigeria has been going through such thing for the last year or so. We've been getting building collapse, and NSE London branch have contributed a lot to try and see how we can avoid this, how we can prevent this. With no further ado, I'm going to ask Engineer Tomi Adebayo to kick it off with his presentation. And if you have any comments, any questions as you speak, please put in the chat. We will track it and get you to ask the questions afterwards when we come to question and answer. So keep your questions coming as he make his presentation. So Engineer Tomi, take it away, please. We can't hear you. Your voice is muted.
Okay, I've unmuted myself. Sorry.
You're fine.
Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this occasion today. Today we'll be talking about something that is more practical and close to home. We'll be looking at health and safety considerations in residential developments, both in the private and the commercial. So let's kick off with the slide 1. So in this country, the health and safety is really strictly regulated by regulation, and this regulation is enforced by the Health and Safety Executive. Now, the Health and Safety Executive generally classifies work into 2 main streams or threads, as you might say. We have the domestic clients and we have the commercial clients. Let's go to the next slide. Now, a domestic client is generally when somebody is doing work in their own house. So for instance, if you think your kitchen is too small, or you think that you can convert your roof into a bedroom and you're doing it for yourself, then you are a domestic client. You will then go and employ an architect or an engineer to do you some drawings, and then you go further to employ a builder or a contractor to do the work. CDM generally refers to them as contractors, principal contractors, and doesn't generally use the word builder, but I will be into using this phrase as we're going along, as I'm sure we all know the implications and meanings of both. Now, when a client has decided to do the work, they have to appoint somebody in writing to take control of the health and safety. It is important that this is put in writing. They just don't assume. But a lot of people do not know about this. And the health and safety executive can be a bit lenient with domestic clients because they know that they do not know. They'll probably go for the architect, the structural engineer, or the builder, because they know that a lot of people do not know their responsibility under health and safety within the regulation, and there is no point persecuting people that are laymen. Let's look at the next slide. A typical commercial client, which is quite clear, is somebody that is not building for themselves, but they are building for sale. So you're looking at developers who are building residential property. They probably might be building things like a block of flats. Now, these people, the HSE, are very, very keen to persecute or reprimand them if they do not do what they're supposed to do. So most of these companies have a consultant in-house who makes sure, I mean, people like Kayode will know, Kayode works for a very big company. They'll probably have loads of consultants at different levels, probably for different construction, who are experts on health and safety for various projects. The consultant will manage, they use the term principal designer. They used to call them CDM coordinators, but now they call them principal designers. He's not necessarily a designer. He might not be an architect or an engineer, but he has to coordinate all the consultants together. He has to notify the health and safety executive with a standard form. He has to make sure that all risk assessments identify all the hazards that potentially might happen on site. And it's very important that the site is provided with welfare. That is things like toilets, places where people can have lunch, where they can spend time. We don't want workers peeing all over the place, which does happen. We've had workers that have actually thrown waste, human waste, in a bag. And so those sort of things are discouraged by providing welfare facilities, hot water where they can make tea, somewhere where they can sit down and smoke, and all these sort of things reduce the risks of hazards on site because they are provided for. Now, depending on the scale of work, the approach to CDM does vary. Domestic clients rely on the builder because they don't know. And the builder then should provide a basic portaloo, like toilet. You see, this is coming very, very common now, but years back, people were taking these things for granted, where people will be rushing off to the nearest McDonald's or something to relieve themselves. All that is now stopped. You then have things like waste skips, where people throw their cans after they finish their rubbish. But in the private sector, with private clients, we do have situations where scaffolding is not well regulated. It is installed with no certificates. It's installed by unlicensed scaffolders. But all these things do not happen on the other side of the coin. There are people that check the certificates. There's people that check the design of the scaffolding. Scaffolding doesn't just go up like that. It's designed for wind loading and all sorts of situations. And if a health and safety executive works on site, you can easily just ask for the certificate for the scaffolding. And if they don't have one, you can ask for the site should be temporarily shut down. Let's move to the next slide. Now, in a typical domestic residential projects, the ones that are very common are loft conversions, side extensions, basements, garage conversions. A loft conversion is very common because a 3-bedroom house can easily be converted to a 5-bedroom house with probably a fraction of the cost of the price of the house. So you could have a 3-bedroom suddenly becomes 5-bedroom by just spending between 35 and 50,000 on the house, depending on big it is. Now, what we have as professionals, the challenges we face when you're working in this environment is that you're dealing with somebody that is a layperson, not to say that they are not educated, but they do not know much about construction, apart from things they've been reading on grand design, Pinterest. They've seen all sorts of fancy things, and these things they want to implement in their house. And sometimes because they are paying, they believe you should listen to them and do what they want. So it does take a bit of confidence, maturity, and experience in order to let people control what they want to do. So it does. Now, domestic client professionals. Now, because the domestic client is also a lay person, they do not always know who is qualified and who is not. A lay person will not necessarily know that an architect could be a chartered architect, or that a surveyor might not be an architect at all. They don't know that an engineer might be chartered structural engineer. Maybe he's actually a mechanical engineer. A lot of the time, they do not know these things. So sometimes, inadvertently, they do employ people that are not very qualified. Another problem they do have is with the fees, in that they are trying to minimize their costs, and they end up employing people that are not very qualified. Now, we have all sorts of demands by clients. In UK, they really love these, what we call bifolding doors. They are doors that can open completely at the back of the house. Typically, they shouldn't be more than 4 meters wide for a reasonable person, but you'll have some people that say they want it, they will extend the house to the side and want to open it all completely. And the longest one, the widest one I've had has gone up to 13 meters. Now, when somebody has an opening of 13 meters and you have to design a steel beam to go over that opening, you're looking at a very, very heavy section. And this section has to be delivered to sites. It has to be lifted in place. And all these things bring health and safety risks to the site. Now, an experienced structural engineer would insist and probably ask to go back to the architect and redesign in such cases where you can conceal columns or you can break the span of the beams in order to reduce such risks. But it doesn't, we do have clients that will put their foot down and say, look, if you can't do it, we'll get somebody else to do it, which in that case, an experienced person like me will say, thank you very much. I think, yes, that probably might be your best option to find somebody else to do it. And these are the sort of things that can bring health and safety risks into a domestic client's property. Next slide, please. Dr. Popola, next slide, yes. Now, due to the At the moment, house prices are very high and they're skyrocketing. They keep rising all the time. And because of this, more people are having to do extensions, and the market is very, very busy. Because of this, there are lots of cowboys coming into the market who are not very qualified and are just there to make quick money. Some of them have certificates from some authorities like Federal Master of Builders, Checker Trade, but what people should do is not to follow those things, but basically to find people that have done work before. Now, typical commercial clients, okay. So with domestic clients, you do not have things like method statements, and you are relying on probably building control or the party wall surveyor to demand for some of the things that are taken for granted in the commercial sector. And so, for instance, for deep excavation in foundations, the NHBC, which is the National Housing Body, they actually insist that any foundation is more than 1.5, 1.8 meters has to be designed by an engineer. Let's look at the next slide. Next slide, sir. On the commercial side, you find that these things don't happen. And the typical commercial clients you would have are developers, building block of flats, housing associations, and there is a huge demand for university accommodation. So there are lots of companies now coming into the market that deal solely with university accommodation. And there are some that are now dealing solely with old people's homes and things like that. Yeah. Let's move to the next slide. On this side, CDM is very strict and is very heavily enforced and implemented. The professional team, everybody knows what they're doing. You have a QS, you have a planner, you have the structural engineers, which there will be a structural engineering firm with senior engineers. You have the HMV, you have all these professionals, everybody knowing what they're doing. You might have things like BIM, where all the drawings are all coordinated together, and all these people have worked together in the past. Fees is not a problem because the company financing the project has already built in an allowance for the fees, so there is no point cutting corners on that. Detailed method statements and risk assessments are carried out, and periodic team meetings are done to identify hazards and risks, and they are dealt with. Next slide, please. Next, Oga. Hello. Now, the next, I'll just want to touch on what we call existing services. These are things like gas mains, electrical cables, BT optic cables, and all these sort of things that exist in people's houses. Sometimes the builders don't know where these things are. We do know that in most cases, the foul water sewers are at the back of the house, but some people have them at the side of the house. Sometimes, because the professional has not been well paid, he doesn't have time to carry out a good survey and make sure where everything is. And then what then happens is when the builder starts digging, he starts cutting through some of these services. The most notorious one is the foul water sewer. And when you're digging more than 1.8 meters with a mechanical excavator and you damage a foul water sewer with a lot of stuff coming through, it does create quite a hazard. And if you're exposed to this sort of foul water, you can pick up Wales disease. With commercial, a lot of work before you actually get the builder on site. There's companies that will do your searches for you and locate all the main, and they will mark them up on a topographical map. They will put invert levels on them. So it's very unusual on a commercial property to say somebody cuts across a cable or somebody broke a sewer. The gas mains are disconnected by the gas authority, and all these things are well documented and well implemented. So it's not common to have a site run from a commercial client to have. Mr. Asbestos. Asbestos is something that leads to a very long-term fatal disease, asbestosis, and there are still properties that have asbestos in them. It's not very common in domestic, but there are some old garages that have asbestos roofing sheets, and sometimes some unscrupulous builders will remove them and just dump them in the garden. They are supposed to be removed carefully. The builder can remove them, but he can't dispose of them. They have to be disposed of by a licensed handler. And all these things are very cheap. We still find people cutting corners doing this. Next slide. In the commercial sector, you cannot demolish a house or a property or a building without a asbestos survey. And also you need to notify the building control of that in that local council under a section 80 notice. And one of the prerequisites of the notice is an asbestos survey. They don't want to know whether you think asbestos is not there or not. You have to carry out this survey. It has to be carried out by a regulated consultant, and that report has to be submitted to the council. If asbestos is identified, it will be removed by specialists, and it will be disposed of and handled by a licensed carrier. So it's you don't have problems like that. So yes, next slide, please. Now, you do have very heavy steel sections, timber sections, concrete, and various building materials that are used to put a project together. Now, these things require handling, and they have to be handled in such a way to reduce the risk to people carrying heavy equipment. So when you have the domestic clients sometimes have engineers that are not taking into consideration all of the constraints in an existing house where walls are there that cannot be demolished. And therefore, sometimes we actually suggest to designers to reduce the removal of load-bearing walls, to provide splice details for long beams, and avoid steel beams in excess of 7 to 8 meters. They are difficult to transport. Now, just to look at a few scenarios where things have gone wrong, I just wanted to, before, as I'm getting towards the end of my presentation, I might have gone very quickly. So let's look at a project on Twickenham Road. Can you just play this video for us, please? Now, if you look at this guy, you can see that is supposed to be an extension. That thing that is running across his site is a main 300 millimeter diameter sewer. That's yes. If you freeze it just there, you can see it running across the back of the property. Now, this gentleman started this job, and he said, oh, I want to do a single-story extension at the back of my house. Oh, that's not a problem. And then, because he didn't do enough background checks, he started digging. And then suddenly he said, you know what, I want to do a basement. And he said, he changed his mind. He said, oh, I want to do a basement. I said, what? Then he started digging. He said, what's this in the middle of my basement? Oh. It's a 300mm diameter. All right, that's not a problem. I'll just divert it, he said. So he called me up when he had this problem. I said, I'll just divert it. And I said, you are definitely not doing that. You can't divert a 300mm live sewer, and Thames Water that own the sewer only allow qualified and trained, certified builders to do such work. So these are the sort of things that happen on site in the domestic side when a client hasn't done enough homework. Let's move to the next. This is another project. In this case, it's not necessarily it's the architect who happens to be a bit naive in that he was just following any demand that the owner demanded. So the owner said, look, I want a 10-meter wide bifolding door. I want an 11-meter open plan living room. Rather than telling this client that, that is dangerous, you don't really want to be doing that, we can hide a column here and there, they insisted to go ahead. I was drawn into the project. I couldn't, it was too late. The architect was feeling a bit embarrassed. He said he didn't want to lose face with the client. So I said, you know what, let me see. The beam will be very heavy, and I'll try my best to convince the client to change his mind. So let's look. This here is the elevations of the project. You can see the architect did a very nice looking design. You can't knock it. You can see those 3 panels there. Those are the bifolding doors. They're not actually in 3 panels. He actually went for 1 single door going from side to side. Let's look at the floor plan, which should be in the next slide. So you can see now the open living room on the ground floor, on the left-hand side. I do wonder why somebody would want to have such a huge living room, unless it's going to be playing badminton or something in the living room. I don't really know. But at the end of the day, when people run into money, sometimes it does get to their head, and they do insist on all sorts of funny things. So let's move on to the structural drawing, the next plan. Now you can see now, when we did all our calculations, the steel beam turned out to be a 254-167 section. A 167 section over 11 meters. I'm sure there are some small cars that don't weigh that much. This is a massive. The fabricator was shocked. He said, I've never installed such a beam before. He couldn't change this guy's mind. I said, well, I've done the calculations. The deflections are within the limits, but this is a bad idea. Anyway, this gentleman went forward and installed, but when he did see the deflection under live load, he started to think twice. So if you look at the next slide, common sense started to prevail, so we ended up having to put in 2 additional columns in order to bring the deflection within serviceability limits. Okay, let's move to the next project. The next project is in a place called Barton-le-Clay. It's in rural Bedfordshire. And this client of mine is a very wealthy guy, as you will see in a minute. He bought this site, which used to be an old water reservoir, and is going to convert it into a residential dwelling. Luckily, he remembered me and appointed us as his structural engineers. And the architect had done quite a good job. In this case, the architect was a very competent architect. I can't knock him. I think in this place, it's just a client who is used to getting his own way. So let's have a look at, yeah, you can see that is not my car, unfortunately. That is his car. As you can see, this man is not short of a pound or 2. If you look at these photographs, these are the photographs of the old water reservoir. They have removed one of the walls so that it doesn't end up being a swimming pool in the middle of nowhere. So it's only got 3 sides retained. And this is the view, the photo, yeah. And then you can now see what the end product is going to look like. This is something anybody would be proud of anywhere in the world. It's going to be beautiful when we finish it. Let's look at the next slide. You can see the elevations is a very, very high quality when we finish it, grand design. You'll probably be one for grand design. So you guys might see me on TV one of these days. Now, let's please on this slide. This is a cross section through that site we're looking at. Now, if you look towards the left, no, towards the left, not yet. Doctor. If you look towards the left of this cross section, you will see that the architects did leave the earth under the reservoir. He left it, yeah? So my guy phoned me up a few days ago and he said, you know what, that's a waste of space. I want to go under that reservoir. I want to use that space under there. Why not? I said, Oga, you'll be looking at about 10 meters retaining wall. He said, so what? Can it be done or not? Yes, it will cost you. Who asked you that? Can it be done? I said, okay, yes, it can be done. So I think that's why I said on one of my previous slides, I said I'm going to have to call on some of the my other fellow colleagues on this site, on this platform, who are very versed in anchored sheet piles and stuff like that. Because no matter what, no matter how experienced you are, there will always be some big boys bigger than you. And you have to know when you need to reach out to people that are more versed in this sort of thing. Let's go to the next slide. I think so you can see the engineering challenges with this job. In this case, he has employed a seasoned architect. He's not short of money. The ground conditions are not too bad because it's chalk. Chalk is very stiff and it does stand up, but still we will have to retain the earth. We can't rely on the natural stiffness of the chalk. So yes, definitely I'll be reaching out to some of you guys on this project. Yes, let's move to the, yes, to come to the conclusion, health and safety in construction applies in both small and large jobs. At the end of the day, the loss of one life, the loss of somebody's spinal back injury, fingers, limbs, it is equally important in both small and large jobs. Small jobs have their challenges because some people do look down on small jobs and say it's only loft conversion. But at the end of the day, if a steel beam drops on somebody's head, or if a bolt drops on somebody's head from a height, or in the process of installing a steel beam, scaffolding comes down, it is still a life lost, which cannot be valued. At the lower end of the market, your maturity comes to play when you're having to deal with a very wealthy person insisting this is what he wants to do. You can see in one case, I had to cave in because I didn't want my friend, the architect, to be too embarrassed. So I said, okay, let's just do this. And on another case, the guy has got so much money. So I thought, well, if he's got the money to do it, why not? And in another case where the guy wanted to divert a 300mm foul sewer, I just had to walk away because that is completely ridiculous. Thank you for listening. And thank you to the Nigerian Society of Engineers to giving us the opportunity to highlight our experience. And now we can take on any questions from the. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Adebayo. That was wonderful. That was bringing back all the requirements that one needs. I mean, myself as a structural engineer, I don't get involved with this kind of health and safety in my practice. But when it comes to teaching students of how things operates on site, in industry, in private, in commercial, I think you've highlighted quite a lot of new things that I'm not quite familiar with. So thank you very much. I've definitely benefit from that. Now we're coming to our question and answer. If you have any question, please raise up your hand or put it in the chat. We've got one question at the moment. So if you do have any other questions, please be free to raise up your hand and I will call you to ask your questions, because I'm sure you have some burning question. As Tommy was speaking there, you were writing things down. So please let us see your hands up, and then we'll put your question to Tommy. The one that I've got here is by Engineer Shinedu, saying that does the principal designer under CDM rule not automatically assume the role of a health and safety coordinator in the absence of a proper written appointment, as you suggested?
Oh, let's have the question again. I missed some of it.
Does the principal designer under CDM not automatically assume the role of health and safety coordinator in the absence of a written appointment, as you suggested?
Well, it's the principal designer, the particular in the private domestic sector, because the private client doesn't know the difference, he will just, unless somebody tells him, please appoint me to be your principal designer, he doesn't really know. Nobody just assumes a role. That role has to be assigned, because if something goes wrong and the health and safety executive are coming down on the site, they will want to know who it is. And nobody at that time will put their hand up and say, I'm the CDM coordinator, when something has gone wrong. Everybody will be pointing at somebody else. So it is important that you don't just assume the role, because nobody wants to take on responsibility without being paid for it. All you do is you tell your clients and say, Mr. Animashaun, you need to appoint somebody in writing. If he says he doesn't understand, then in order to absolve yourself, you put that in an email that because you have not appointed the principal designer, Mr. Animashaun, therefore, you have full responsibility for health and safety. If you do not know what that means, please go and read up CDM Regulations 2015. In that case, you are free. If the HSC does come down, they will see that you've done your part. But no, you can't just assume the role. Somebody has to appoint you to take the role. It's very clear in the commercial sector, nobody, because CDM coordinators or principal designers can charge up to 1% of the construction cost. They charge quite a lot of money. So nobody is just going to take on that role. It's going to be appointed. So we tend to use the same CDM company, a company called CDM Scope, and we use them on all our projects because we know they are reasonable people. They don't take things over the top, because some people do take things over the top. But once you started using a team or a consultant, you end up using them over the time. I think I've answered the question.
Yes, you have. Thank you very much. Another follow-up question just come in, saying does the qualification to be a principal? Some people
does what?
No, wait a minute. Yeah, the next question is, does the qualification to be a principal designer not include some health and safety competency?
On a small job, no. But the thing is, as a professional, you need to know what you're stepping into. If you're working for a small, on a domestic job whereby you're designing something like a basement, you don't necessarily have to be a CDM qualified, but there are some basic things they will expect you to know. And if something goes wrong and the HN safety executive turn up on site, they will interview you under oath. They will actually, it's happened before, where they will actually call you into a room and say you're under oath and anything you say might be taken as evidence. And if you do not show competence, then you're negligent. So they'll do you for negligence. That you should know as a chartered architect, as a chartered engineer, you should know basic CDM. And if you don't, then you could be prosecuted for negligence. And if somebody died, then you could be looking at corporate manslaughter. You could be looking at anything. So as part of our CPD, they will expect that you should be attending courses on CDM. They don't expect you to be an expert, but they expect you to know your role and the role of other participants in the project. So you don't necessarily have to have a diploma in CDM, but you should know. On the other sector, in the commercial, most of them they have NABOSH, they have all sorts of qualifications because these are what they do all the time. And of course, they actually would, on the first day, carry out an induction and let everybody know what their role is. So yes, those guys have qualifications in various things regarding health and safety, and that's why they're paid so much, and that's why they carry so much responsibility.
Right, thank you very much. Let's now go back. Oh, fantastic. Let's now go back to the application of what you've just told us now. You give us how it's done in the UK. Let's now reflect to back home. And I could see Engineer Adebayo raise up his hand, spot on time, to see, is there anything we can learn from what you've just said to us today that we're not putting in practice back home? So I don't know whether you want to say something first based on your experience of working in Nigeria, and then I'm going to bring Engineer Kunle Adebayo to complement or say something against that.
Okay. Unfortunately, when I worked back in Nigeria, I was working with a company which is now known as Corn Oil. In that time, it used to be called National Oil and Chemical Marketing Company. National Oil was part of the Shell Group, and health and safety was just it, to the extent that even if you park your car in the car park and you do not face it so that you can move without reversing, you could be sacked for not wearing a safety belt. So these things can happen in Nigeria, but that was the oil sector. So I suppose the oil sector takes health and safety very seriously. In order for it to be happening in Nigeria, it has to be enforced in some way. And I think corruption is such a big problem. And, and I'm sure Mr. Engineer Adebayo probably did mention it on previous. It's such a big problem because you can imagine how much abuse a health and safety executive could have if he's corrupt. Which means he just goes onto people's sites, closing down sites willy-nilly. There is nothing that is happening in this country that cannot happen in Nigeria, but unless we get rid of that culture of abuse and corruption, it is not going to happen. Because right down to, sorry, with all respect, the judiciary, it's just a nightmare. And yes, if we can't implement all of these things, whereby we can have the council getting involved. We can, but to enforce them might be a bit of a challenge. Yeah.
Engineer Adebayo, please unmute yourself and make your contribution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I think it's been a very, very good presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Really very interesting and I suppose down to earth. So that's really great. I actually will take the last bit, the issue regarding Nigeria last. So you may want to take notes of the 2 or 3 questions I have. I actually have a lot, but I will only ask 1 or 2. I think the first one is really a comment also on the stadium regulations about, I think the question that was asked earlier was probably handled by you, but I think it is all about how much responsibility one draws as a designer. And so if on a site, there's a failure, there's a collapse of formwork, even though you've done all your parts, you've stated you are not the supervisor, you're not this, you're not that, it could still go back to someone saying that you as a designer didn't think it through as to how they would build it because it requires such extensive formwork, maybe cantilevering out, and therefore would be found culpable as well, just by virtue of being the designer. So I think the big take from that is that as designers, it's not just good enough to throw it to the contractor and say, well, you sort it out. Some responsibility there. Yeah. Okay, the other one is more of interest because you really whet our appetite in so many of your case studies. So I was just going to ask you, the Twickenham one was an interesting one where you had the sewer that the poor man found in his back garden, and it looks like he had already embarked on part of the work before discovering that. So the question I would just simply ask, purely from knowledge point of view, is what are the options open to him? Would he actually have gone to the council and said, please, 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 can you come and do this at no cost to me? Or what else? But I certainly agree with you that the last thing he can do is just go ahead and start diverting himself. So now to the final question, which or comment stroke question, bringing this back to Nigeria. Now I know there's some statistics that show that the construction site is one of the most dangerous places in the world. There is no doubt about that. And so it's a good thing to see a lot of this health and safety, precautions being taken and being, not just stipulated, but also enforced. And I know that in the UK, a lot of the bad parts of construction work have been eliminated. However, in Nigeria, we have major issues. I think the biggest issue is that safety, to a large extent, also has a direct relationship with cost. So if you have a worker who wants to just do something and he can just put 2 or 3 planks together, hop, step and jump and get to where he needs to do it, he will claim to you that, see, I did it and it didn't cost me much. In the UK, that won't be appropriate. As you rightly said during your talk, you will have the scaffolding there. The scaffolding will have to be designed. Someone will sign it off and so on. So how are we going to cope with that in Nigeria? Bearing in mind that already construction is so expensive and almost out of the reach of the common man. And so if we have to add the layer, which I won't say if, I mean, we have to add the layer of safety. How can we best achieve that at least cost? So I'll stop there. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Engineer Tomi, did you catch all of those questions or no? I know you were struggling with your
I tried to do a mental. We had 3 questions there.
Do you want me? Do you want me to rephrase them to you, or
Yes,
you
yes. Okay.
Right.
Don't give me a refresher.
Right. The first one is about CDM. Engineer,
Yes.
I'm sorry, because he was struggling to hear what you were saying, so I'm just going to say it again. It's about CDM, and he was saying that how much responsibility does the designer have when things goes wrong? Do you have to rely on the CDM or health and safety person, or does the ownership of the problem comes back to the designer or not? The
Okay,
second one about the guy, the Tucunam, in terms of the sewer diversion. He was saying, what are the options open to him? Is he going to call the council and say, listen, come on, move the sewer and I'm going to pay for it? Or is he going to abandon the work, or is he going to do the work by himself? So he wants to know what we normally do in the UK in this situation. And the third one is about, coming back to the UK now. I mean, you were saying, yes, to do anything substantial like this, you need health and safety. You want to reach a height, you have to have a proper scaffolding, whereby in Nigeria, the guy will just put 2 or 3 planks together, boom, 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 get the work done. And he will come to you and say, I've done it. How do we change people's mind or mindset to get them to be aware that, yes, health and safety is very important. Yes, you've done it, but next time around, it could go wrong so badly. How do we train them? How do we teach them? How do you try to make sure they don't go around doing things in the harsh way?
Yeah. Okay, let me start with the first question. What the health and safety executive will be doing is they will probably, if there is a failure of a structure, which can happen, they would want to know that has the designer has he done due diligence based on somebody of his experience? So they expect that the person that designed this thing should be a chartered structural engineer. Has he made reasonable assumptions? Now, there is reasonable will be challenged in court. So you will be in court and there'll be an expert witness, and you will have to say, that expert witness will then say, in his opinion, a chartered engineer of your status should have picked this up or not. Now, if it's to do with temporary works, because on bigger jobs, you have specialist temporary works engineers that design the scaffolding, design the shoring, design all these things. This is what they do. I tried it once, I just could, it was going back to very, very basic physics and mathematics. And I thought, you know what, it's been a long time since I've taken moments about anything. I'm not doing that. So you have people that specialize in that. So it's all down to, have you been negligent or not? If it's an act that could not have been foreseen by somebody of 30 years experience, then it will just be taken as one of those things that could not have been avoided and you can walk away free. But if, for instance, you made a mistake, which somebody of your experience shouldn't have made, you took the wrong factors, you assumed the wrong strength of concrete, you didn't put the right reinforcement in the right place, which also is difficult because you do the job, somebody else checks it, to the extent that sometimes the bar bending would look at something and say, hang on a minute, this looks it's a bit ropey, isn't it? I think, Kayode, do you want to have a look at this? And Kayode is a very experienced guy. He'll look at it and think, ooh, there's something wrong here. So, but it can happen. But at the end of the day, you do have professional indemnity insurance, which can protect you against negligence. But if that negligence leads to loss of life or limb, and that negligence is beyond what they expect of somebody of your experience, then you could be persecuted or reprimanded in some way. Regarding the sewer, that shouldn't have happened because that gentleman should have waited for what we call a building control application, which would have identified that there's a big sewer there. Oga, you can't put an extension there. But he was in a hurry because he didn't want to lose some of the staff. So he went ahead. Now, we are now in a position where that pipe is there. It's very unlikely that Thames Water will divert a sewer of that size. It has to build it back and reinstate that job. The sewers do belong to Thames Water, which is a sewerage company. So it's not down to the council. He can't. If it was a smaller, say, 150, then yes, he would have been able to divert it. They probably would have allowed him to divert it himself. But that one is a very main primary trunk sewer. So unfortunately for him, he's going to have to build that thing back and reinstate it to exactly how it was before, which is going to cost him quite a lot of money. But if he had gone through the process, it shouldn't have happened, is that he was jumping the gun and went ahead of the process. On the final question, I would say, in UK, they have simple guides for simple, sorry, not to say simple people, but they have little guides for almost everything. So there is actually a guide for scaffolding, where you don't have to have A-level mathematics to be able to design the scaffolding following some tables. So I could say if in Nigeria, we could have very basic tables and guidelines and documents and these things which will help somebody, they have to be a bit literate, of course, to say, if we're going to have put up a bamboo scaffolding, for one story, the bamboo should be at least 100 mil diameter. Okay, if the guy doesn't know 100 mil diameter, then we're in trouble. Hopefully, he should know. Then we could say, we're not using bamboo for more than 3 floors, or we're not using bamboo for more than 2 floors. And then little what I used to call noddy guidelines, which help people just to know, like they will say, if an excavation is more than 1 meter, then it needs basic formwork. If it's more than 2 meters, then you need to employ a temporary works engineer. And basic guidelines, and these guidelines will then be passed on to building control, so they know. So they don't necessarily have to be engineers, they don't necessarily have to be mathematicians, they just have some very, very basic documents, which I did mention during my talk about the building collapse, which I said to build on top of the National Building Code, to have, like in UK, they have approved documents which have broken down the Building Act, building regulations in such a way, there are some rule of thumbs in there. So you can say a foundation for a single-story building should be this. A foundation for a 2-story building should be that. And just simplify the process. In terms of cost, there is always going to be a battle between health and safety and cost, but we just have to set some minimum standards which we have to follow no matter what the cost is. It's easy for us to say that, but I think that's what's going to have to happen for us to be able to build safe buildings.
Okay, thank you very much. I saw Dr. Moses raise up his hand earlier, but I think it's put it down. Maybe the question he was about to ask has been answered. Otherwise, Dr. Moses, you have any comments? Any?
Good afternoon, Dr. B, and good afternoon, Tomi. I posted my question on the chat group, but maybe because I'm a professional colleague, I thought the presentation seemed to emphasize a lot about the responsibility of the architect and the designer, I would expect contractors to have a role in health and safety under CDM regulations.
Yes, like I said, on the side, you know, I was dealing with two different sides of the coin, two different ends of the market. At the lower end of the market, you have builders, contractors of various level of English communication, various level of background training, various. It's such a complete mismatch. On the other side, on the contractor side in the commercial sector, yes, I would say contractors like the sort of companies Coyote works for, sort of companies, the sort of industries where you've worked in the oil industry. Yes, they are very competent in health and safety, and they actually could feed back to the designer and say, we think something is wrong here. I don't see how we're going to implement or carry out this activity because of so and so. Please go back to the drawing board, or can we do it this way? And that's why some contracts allow for design by the contractor in some JCC contracts where they allow the contractor to provide an alternative design. So yes, they do bring quite a lot to the table, but as I said, I was just going through quite a wide spectrum of the market. So you will find that the answer is in there somewhere. I might have not spent so much time on it, but it's there.
Right, thank you very much for that.
Dr. B.
Yes, go on.
Can I just make a comment?
Mm-hmm.
Every time we have presentations like this, we always talk about Nigeria. What do we do in Nigeria? What is wrong with Nigeria adopting something similar to CDM regulations?
There's absolutely nothing wrong. And this is some of the things we're going to be putting to the Committee on Codes and Standards, which myself and a couple of our members sit on. This is what we're going to be putting. Actually, in your area of work, offshore industry, they've got quite a lot of those codes and regulation being adopted in normal structural or buildings. It hasn't really been, unless Engineer Adebayo, tells me otherwise. So what we are going to be proposing to this new committee this coming year, and I've spoke to quite a few members of that committee, is to get the CDM going or similar thing going in Nigeria, and either adopt what the UK have or create a new one all over again. And that's something we're planning to do, because it's a major problem, especially anything to do with supervision of site and building collapse. It's a big problem. And one is to start addressing it before it gets out of hand. So
can I just add something in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think what Moses has said is quite correct. We should at least be aiming for best practice in everything we do. Not because we'll achieve it, but at least if we aim high enough, even if we get 60% of it, that's still significant and above aiming for 15% or not even aiming at all and just getting the bare minimum. So I totally agree. But at the same time, as you know, the one problem is that it's one thing having the theory, actually implementing. I know that in London, as Tomi has quite rightly said, if you are going to do some extension from 3-bedroom to 5-bedroom, you don't just go ahead and do it and hope that nobody knocks on your door and everything is fine. The truth is someone will knock on your door and you are going to really pay for it if you have flouted the rules. In Nigeria, the implementation, that's where, actually trying as much as possible to enforce. Because even something as basic as getting plan approval to build a new building, people are still flouting it. How much more things like, health and safety considerations? So it's a tough one, but I know we will get there. And it can start in the in the visible areas, the Ikois of this world and the likes, and gradually it will filter through. So I don't think we should be discouraged. We shouldn't be discouraged, but I can tell you it's very much an uphill task. You mentioned corruption as well. Even when it's being enforced, somebody will go around the back and give money. And that corruption is just about money. It is about, I know a commissioner. So the commissioner I will ring him and he will go and talk to those people and they'll back down. That's corruption as well. Many people think it's just money. It's not. It is simply doing the wrong thing. And we are masters, I'm sorry to say it, we are masters at that at the moment. I will end there.
Thank you very much. I've got a raise hand from Engineer Tony Ajala, but before that, there's a question. It's not quite relevant. Maybe it is. Let me read it out for you. How do we ensure the Nigerian government factors in the health and safety and easy mobility of disabled persons in public and commercial buildings? I mean, this country, as you know, we always have ramps and all that. Does Nigeria have that? I'm not sure if you're the right person to answer that question, but anyway, that was the question.
Oh, is a question to me?
It's a question generally, but whether you or somebody else from Nigeria could answer that. I mean, do we insist that we provide RAM for access to people with disability?
It is the Disability Act in any country, particularly in UK, is still in relative infancy and is still very hard to implement. A lot of people do not want to. Basically, people say if a building is existing and it doesn't have disability access, then they have no obligation to provide it because it can be expensive. I don't know. I think on the grand scale of things, we need to sort out very basic health and safety issues first for the general public. And as we continue to mature in our development of construction and quality of construction, I can see that, yes, like you said, in the posh areas of Nigeria, these things are there, maybe to an extent, but not. It is going to take a while. Yes, we should think about it, but I think we've got so many bigger problems, with all due respect to disabled people, before we get around to be able to implement a disability enforcement.
Engineer Adebayo, do we have the equivalent of health and safety executive in Nigeria? Has he dropped out? Is he still there?
Yeah, sorry, I'm still here. I was just writing something in the chat box. We do not necessarily as well structured, but we do. I think it's more like the case of priorities. It's the case of going into a room where there's so much filth that one will be asking, why are you looking at the cobwebs when there's so much actual filth to be taken out? So it's an uphill task. One thing I liked about what when you were introducing Engineer Tomi Adebayo, that was that he had gone from working for the public sector, as it were, or for municipals or whatever, to private, but the private, but they were still he was still contacted, and in fact, it even made more sense for him. So I think we're now in a phase where everything has always been government. you know, from NEPA to power to petrol to everything has always been government regulated. NITEL was there, and you can see the difference when you privatize things and deregulate. Look at our telecom industry, way ahead of where it used to be. So I think hopefully we're now in a period where government is starting to realize that, okay, yes, let's make use of the private sector. Let's make use of private practitioners to close the gaps or the obvious gaps in what we can't do. So again, I want you to be optimistic, but the signs aren't really good enough yet to show that changes are happening.
Thank you very much. Engineer Ajala, please unmute yourself.
Hello, thank you very much, Engineer Adebayo, for the presentation. One of the things we have, especially in the areas of clients, principal contractor, principal designer, many of the clients, after design has been completed, they tend to contribute a lot into the changes of design. We need to be very careful. You see, many of the times I tell many young engineers, not only in Nigeria or anywhere, especially even in UK, when you're a client, you cannot change design anyhow. Once you start changing design, you become a designer. I always say that, you know, use the best statement. Tell a designer, have you considered this? Have you thought of this? Don't be a designer. Many times, you know, if you look at what is happening all over in Nigeria and sometimes here, a client will say, oh, I don't want that column. Can you put it there? Can you put it that there? You become a designer.
Yeah.
And if a designer accepted it, he's taking unnecessary liability. So you have to, many clients need to be very careful, and we have to regulate this properly. And also, Dr. Opokola says something. If you're going to have an organization, the organization must have a teeth to bite. If you don't have an organization that cannot bite, forget about it. Don't say, don't say health and safety executive is part of NSE or Coren or whatever. They must be independent. You see, so this is one of the things that, you know, we have to be very careful, both in UK or anywhere, that clients must know their role as a client, and principal contractor or principal designer must know their roles as principal designer or contractor, and they should not be in a place of this contributing so much every time into design.
Thank you very much. Contribution. Thank you very much for your contribution there, Engineer Tony. I know you're full of amazing experience having worked across the sectors in the UK. So thank you very much for that. Engineer Adeyemi Oshuni, please. Engineer Adeyemi, you raise your hand. You want to unmute and speak?
Sorry, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Engineer Tomi, for your very valuable presentation. I'm just interested to know if there's any value in exploring potential solutions to some of the problems faced in Nigeria. There have been people who kind of skirted around ideas that could maybe enable us to operate a bit more effectively in terms of building control, health and safety, and such like. So I just wondered, is there any such thing as insurance for building works, or in which case maybe engineers could offer some element of supervision or inspection of buildings and the design process, the construction on behalf of maybe an insurer or something like that, which is how the private sector would influence what is happening. You see what I'm saying? So that government is almost taken out of it. If you have already insured a building in the event that something unintended occurred, which meant that there was loss, if you have insured, there are terms of that insurance. And if you contravene those terms, but someone needs to independently verify that you haven't contravened any of those terms on behalf of the insurer, for instance. Does that exist? Is that just as an idea? I wonder.
Yes. Okay.
Very interesting. Go on, Toby.
It's really, in fact, Engineer Adebayo had actually started to circumference that matter in terms of bringing in third-party accreditation, whereby an independent engineer will act on behalf of an insurance and say, we have supervised this project and we believe that it is been safely constructed and it has been constructed to an acceptable level of safety. When I mentioned this, I think I and Dr. Moses did talk about this a bit. We haven't gone so much further. And one of the concerns was probably who will bear the cost of this, that some of the developers in Nigeria might find it, who's going to pay for that? That's another cost onto our development cost. But if, for instance, the public have the confidence, or if, for instance, lawyers demand for these sort of things, then yes, it can be an alternative to relying on the government's building control or relying on any other government parastatal, whereby you've gone out there, you know the standards internationally, you've looked at how things are, and then you raise your concern and you say, we're going to withdraw the insurance for this property because things have not been done in the right way. Or yes, so it has a sort of like, almost like a kite mark badge on a development to say, this has been supervised by Engineer Yemi, and who is blah, 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 quality assurance company, and therefore you can be confident that we did not rely on Lagos State Building Control. This was supervised and checked. I think it's something that I think will eventually take off in Nigeria. Yes, if we can market it properly.
All right, thank you very much for that. Engineer Kim, please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Engineer Adebayo, for the presentation. Very good presentation. Some of the things which I would like to comment on is that on the design side, I used to be the principal designer. So, and when you do all these things, you tend to pass the file. That is when we used to have a safety file and all this stuff.
Yes.
Pass it to the contractor for him to comment, so that everybody has an input into the health and safety plan, and which goes with the job when on completion, so that when there are any additional extension to the property or whatever, they will take up the safety plan and look at it. They know what you have done.
Is she going out?
Hello? Oh, okay.
Why?
So they will look at it and see what has been done. And they used to, that is kept for life. And I think that can be done. And even in Nigeria, I think with regards to Nigeria, I think the starting point should be that like health and safety executive here, I think it was formed by the government. And they have, we all know that they have powers. They can come in and shut down your site anytime. They can prosecute you and all those stuff. We all know. So you don't want to mess about with health and safety. And I think if that can be established in Nigeria, and they be given total independence, like Korean is giving total independence and any other this thing. If they can be given total independence, and I think we'll have a lot of things going, and we get things in order. I think, as we said, and as Engineer Adebayo said, I think it's the problem is implementation and all this. It is me. Don't you know who I am? I think that's part of the problem. And one thing you also said, which I think I need to draw your attention to. Some of the old buildings, because I used to work in local authorities, and you got to have everything with design. You must take into consideration all the users, including disabled. So some of the work I've done, we've actually called in partially sighted people who are disabled. They have their own organization, which you talk to them, you give them the drawing, they look at it, they will advise you, because you cannot know everything they are going through since we are able-bodied. And that is based on my experience in UK. So we talk to them, they give us advice. Okay, we used to use this. They will tell you what you don't know. And we incorporate it into the design for the contractor to implement. And I think that's one of the things we need to focus on. I don't see that. I think we need to be able to talk to our people in Nigeria to see how it can be done to improve it. And I'm glad that Engineer Adebayo is on this platform, and and he said he's going to communicate with other people. And I think with him, we can actually implement a proper health and safety culture and structure in the country for us to work on. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. Just one final comment on the chat from Engineer Shinedu. Engineer Shinedu, do you want to read your comment out? Or should I just read it? I'm sure you could all see it. It says that I believe that private building control consulting will be a very big business in Nigeria.
That's what we want to hear.
The moment the banks begin to demand the technical sign from the structural engineers as a reason for giving their loans for any development, it will become a massive new industry. And he thinks that this is what NSE should really start to work on. And yes, with something NSE London branch could recommend to NSE headquarters or to all those building developers and architects, engineers to start to think of this kind of thing, to make sure nothing goes by, oh, I know the commissioner, oh, I know the governor. All the paperwork needs to be there, signed off by qualified people before any step is taken. So yes.
Dr. P.
I can initiate that. Yes. Who's that?
It's me here.
Oh, Engineer Moses.
Yeah. What about instances where you don't need a loan?
I know you're a devil. I know you're a devil advocate. I know you're a devil advocate. You always think of all the impossible. Yes, of course, but you still have to get that piece of paper signed by somebody, whether it's a stolen money or your own money, whatever. Before anything starts, you still need that somebody to sign to make sure you tick all the boxes when it comes to health and safety. Yes.
Dr. P, can I just add something on?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think one of the things we also do in the United Kingdom is that when people are tendering for a job, we always ask them that how many accidents have they had, health and safety wise, in the last 5 years or in the last 3 years. It's part of their document they submit as part of the tender document when they are submitted. And those are the things we look at. And from that, you are able to judge. And you know, and they need to also have this thing on site book to be telling them what kind of accident happened on site, how it was treated, and all those stuff. Those will cut down the amount of accidents we have.
They need to classify the accident and display the number. Yes, that's right.
That's right.
Right. Thank you very much. One more hands up, and I'm going to wrap it up. Sheriki, Engineer Sheriki.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to apologize for joining this very late. So
Don't worry. We're meeting in person next week, and you pay for all the food and drink.
So bearing on that, my question may have been answered. Now, most of the conversation I met borders on the designers and architects and whatnot, and we're kind of referring back to Nigeria. My understanding from looking at things whenever I go to Nigeria, from things I read, I realized that we have equal more problem on the construction side in terms of quality and competency, which I think, I don't know how that can be incorporated, and I don't think any designer will be able to solve that problem. And I think it's a national issue. I think the issue of competency is not local, it spreads across the country. Now, I know from the conversation you said before, I know that the contractors on their own, they will teach you the designer's design methodology or approach in order to get clarification, or sometimes to change the design intent. Or even with that, even if that is implemented in Nigeria, we'll still have a problem of quality at the construction side and competence as well. So my question then is, how can we approach this in terms of health and safety in construction in Nigeria?
Whoever wants to answer that.
I mentioned something before where I said training in terms of probably we do lack a bit of vocational training in Nigeria. There's been quite a lot of emphasis on academic qualifications and the likes. But if we have a bit more vocational education, that can help at the grassroots level. The building control needs to be established, because building control do educate people, because they go out on site and they sometimes can pass on some knowledge to some standards that are expected. It's going to take a while, because I think there's been a huge training gap in. I understand now that a lot of foreign nationals are coming into Nigeria to fill the skills gap. So it probably will take a while. It probably is a cultural change for us to start thinking more in terms of vocational than academic training, and try to, for the lower level developments, which are low-rise buildings, come up with quite a few rules of thumb. In the good old days, some of these builders that I know that were more experienced, when I first came into building control, some of the senior builders they had their City and Guild certificates, and they just knew some basic rules of thumb. And they will say, for instance, if the thickness of the wall is this, the foundation should be 3 times the thickness of the wall. And if a timber is going this way, it should be 1/10 of something plus 25. They just have these basic rules, which helps them without having to have a GCSE in physics or mathematics to be able to make very, very fundamental decisions. So maybe if we, as Dr. Pokola said, we take all these things on board and we try to see how we can simplify the process to deal with the majority of the developments. But of course, for the larger developments, we still have to rely on more intellectual people to control, because that is definitely more advanced, and there's no rule of thumb you can apply to bending moment, envelopes, and wind loading, and all the fancy stuff that Dr. Moses could lecture us about. So yes, I think that is down to training, and we don't have the answers now, but I think we can think about it.
If I could just add to that, I think one of the things we need to be doing is the experienced engineers in Nigeria, when they are doing buildings, they need to be there to assure, to be able to assure of the quality of the material they are doing. Say, for example, if they are pouring slab or they are mixing the concrete on site with this mixer, they should be taking the slump test or cube test to see and to actually highlight where the base for the floor, for the slab, so that they know which country was poured in there. When they test it in 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 28 days, they will know whether this makes the required strength, and they will know where to demolish on the slab, because the slabs are cast in grid. So I think it's a matter of, if this is enforced, then the issue of safety, even the cubes, the blocks they make on site, testing them to make sure that they use the right mix of my material, I think we can improve, because we are facing this problem now. I'm sure I can confidently say back in the 60s, 70s, they used the same system and things were okay. The buildings still stand up, but not the ones they are doing today. So how did those ones do it? How did they do it? We didn't have much of building collapses in the 60s, 70s, I think some part of the 80s. So what is happening today? Because people are cutting corners. So they need to specify the correct mix on the drawings and what they need to do. Thank
you very much, Engineer Adelakun. We're very grateful for your contribution there. We need to wrap it up. Before we do, I need to inform you of what is happening in the next few weeks. Today, Engineer Adebayo, thank you very much for your presentation. It's been
welcome.
And the question and answer that follows, I could see a lot of people are thinking really how we can make things better, how we can make sure our country is better controlled in terms of health and safety, what experience we can take from here and apply in Nigeria generally. So we really thank you for that. So as a result of that, we're moving on in 2 weeks' time, and we wanted to make changes really, because as you know, we've been doing this online. We've got the highest number of webinars in the whole of NSE in the last 2 years. Yeah, last year alone we did about 16, and the year before we probably did about 24. So, but we wanted to start changing the narrative now that the UK governments have calmed down on COVID. Actually, COVID had disappeared since the Russian and Ukraine war started. So we need to come back together. We need to start seeing more of each other. We need to start, shaking hands and, hugging people and socializing. So as a result of that, our next webinar, which is again going to be on health and safety, on the 19th of March, in 2 weeks' time, is going to be both in person, and we're going to have it online as well. But we want you guys to come. We want you to come. It's going to be at Victoria College, London. The same 2 p.m. start. And it's going to be by Engineer Nike Amiaka, a fellow of the Institute of Chemical Engineer. And she's going to be talking about inherent safer design principle, which is going to have a fantastic link with what you've just said today. So we would really like us to come together on the 19th and basically, let's start seeing each other again, rather than, seeing each other by video. Some people today, I didn't see their face at all, like Engineer Hakim and Engineer Ajala, they hide their face. I don't know why. Well, this is me on the beach in Barbados here, and I'm showing my face. So please, that's what we need to do in a few weeks' time. And don't forget, London branch, we're still very active. We're doing a lot of things. Those 10 female I showed you earlier, we need a lot of sponsorship for them. If you're willing to contribute for their fees, for their exam registration, for further training that we're providing for them, please, we need your help. So this is our email here, contact@nsclondon.org, or you could just call that number or call the chairman's number or the deputy chairman's number. It's all on our WhatsApp, or basically just drop a note on the WhatsApp to say you wanted to do this. And earlier, a gentleman was on the platform called Elder Oyin Subao. It's gone off now. He set up a little workshop or a mini school where you start teaching people about business and also technical education. And all he was coming to ask for, if you have anything, any device, any instrument, a sewing machine, a mixer, concrete mixer, or anything at all that somebody could use to learn or even donate to somebody to go and set up their business. Or if you want to give a webinar on how to set up a business, he's very keen for you to contact him. I will put his contact on the WhatsApp later, so that if you want to contact him directly, that's the reason why he came on board to listen to what we had to say. So without anything else to say, I think this is the light slide. Again, Engineer Adebayo, thank you very, very much. It's been eye-opener. We've learned a lot from what you were giving us today. And I'm going to finish the recording by playing again the video of the girls I showed you earlier, our 10 female girls that we're sponsoring. I'm going to play their video again so that you can see what they're up to. This is their teachers in the middle, their principal in the middle there.
As one of 10 female students of Government Technical College in CIUD, this controversial Nigeria Center of Engineer UK branch, what are the benefits have you derived from this scholarship?
My name is Engr from Government Technical College in CIUD State. I'm one of the beneficiaries of this scholarship scheme given to us by Nigeria Society of Engineers NSE branch. We appreciate the efforts of the NSE of us for giving us this opportunity. If not because of the many of us may not be in the classroom today, even our parents are in life of our students. We now take the lesson for free. Once again, I say thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Miriam from Government Technical College, NSE-LNB. In fact, when they sent us for school fees, we used to assist our parents at home to wet bread, pure water, or food buy in order to get our school fees. Therefore, we appreciate the NSE UK branch for the opportunity given to us. Thank you, sir Ahmad.
Thank you very much for that. Sorry about the quality of that. And before we go, I've just noticed our past president of NSE is in the room, Engineer Babagana Mohammed. I don't know if you want to share a word or two to us, Engineer.
Mr. P.
Yes. How are you,
chairman, sir? Good evening this evening, or is it afternoon?
We're about 4 o'clock here.
So it's getting to afternoon, right?
Yeah.
So we are good afternoon, my colleagues. I'm very happy to be here today, as usual. Dr. P, I know this will happen. I know something more than this will happen. That's why I quickly readjusted myself. And I said, I have to join Dr. P on this program. And I want to appreciate all of you for coming together and putting this program. World Engineering Day is a day set aside to celebrate engineering and engineers. Not only engineering, but with engineers too. So we must find a deliberate way of celebrating ourselves. Not until we are out of this world. No, I reject that. Please organize sessions. Let's celebrate our colleagues. It's a must. We must celebrate our colleagues. Because I don't expect, we should not expect anybody to celebrate our colleagues for us. No, we must celebrate our colleagues when we are alive. I don't want somebody to be carrying flower to rush into my house when I am gone. No, I don't want that. So all of us, that is what it is all about. And I appreciate you. And in doing that, we must also give it back to the society. Please do not forget, we came from a background. Most of us went to public schools, and today the story is different. So please, let's give it back to the society. Let's get back, look at any school around us, and then adopt it and see ways we can assist the people. That is the only way, because we need to grow capacity, and also we need to grow the people psychologically and physically. Psychologically and physically. We need to grow everybody. And it is the responsibility of you and me, because God has made me and you. So we should make people behind us. We are instruments. So I want to appreciate all of you, and please encourage all my colleagues, because I've been hearing so many things these days. We want to leave NSE. NSE is doing that. NSE is not doing that. NSE is not doing right. Agreed. We are in a trying time. That does not mean we should kill NSE. No, we should not kill NSE. All of us should stand there and insist that the right thing must be done. It doesn't matter who ox is going to be God. It doesn't matter. People will say what they want to say. That's not your problem. We must do what is right. Because today, your name and my name are at stake. Take it or leave it. That's how it works. And anybody coming in to bastardize my name and your name, if you will agree, I will not agree. And as president of NSE, I will not even agree on your behalf. I will not agree. So please, let us all put our hands together, and on deck, and see how we'll also move our society forward. And please, let's celebrate ourselves. London branch, you have done very well, and you are doing very well, and please, you must do more. That is where we started. That is where NSE started, 1958. Don't forget, you are the mother and father of NSE. Don't forget, London branch. Dr. P, I repeat, you are the mother and father of NSE. Don't forget, I repeat again, you are the father and mother of NSE, the law of Trinity. I keep quiet here.
Thank you very much, President. We really appreciate you, and we do celebrate you very much. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Thank you. Yes, engineer, I'm going to stop recording because I don't want to record the next thing I'm going to say.